You wake up in your childhood bedroom, but your mind is fully grown. The calendar shows a day you remember too well, and every regret is suddenly editable. Would you restart your life and still recognize yourself when it's done? In this world, you can restart your life at any moment, returning to an earlier point in your own timeline while keeping every memory and skill you've gained. First misconception: it's not time travel with unlimited shortcuts, because your body must relive every day again. Second misconception: it's not painless, because your emotions restart with you and old wounds still sting. Third misconception: it's not a guaranteed upgrade, because knowing the future changes it the instant you act. 24 hours after your first restart, the rush feels like stealing a second heart. But you test it with tiny pivots. One sentence you won't say, one door you won't open, one message you won't send. You collect quick wins, catching a dropped glass, avoiding a dumb injury, choosing a kinder reply. It feels clean and heroic, doesn't it? Then you try a bigger save. You prevent a minor accident you remember. The twist is immediate. The accident doesn't vanish, it migrates, and someone else takes the hit. Now, guilt enters the room, and it has teeth. Do you restart again to fix that and risk moving the harm again? Then the first social twist hits. You start sounding rehearsed. Your laugh arrives a beat late. Your eyes track events too early, and people can't name why they feel uneasy. You try to fix the unease by being even more perfect, and that backfires. A reasonable assumption is that most people detect patterns faster than they admit, especially in someone close. By night, you realize the mask is heavier than the mistake you erased. So here's the question. How long can you act natural while editing everything? 7 days in, you aim at relationships, not moments. You show up during a friend's rough week with exact timing, and you steer a conversation away from the topic that once detonated. It works at first, and the relief is addictive. You even prevent a bad decision that once cost you months, and you feel like you just bought your future back. But a new consequence grows. You start treating people like outcomes. You listen less because you think you already know what they'll say. Here's the twist. The friend you saved becomes smaller around you because they feel managed. They ask, "Why are you acting like you already know me?" And your stomach drops. You try the same trick at work or school, nudging a conflict away from its old cliff. It gets worse when people sense you're steering, and they push back harder than before. You consider restarting to undo the suspicion, but that creates a loop. How many repeats does it take before you stop trusting your own intentions? So tell me, what's scarier, losing someone or keeping them by turning them into a plan? 1 month after restarting, you're living with a double soundtrack. In the morning, you're a body in the present, and at night, you're a mind replaying the future you remember. You study with brutal efficiency because you know which chapters mattered and which were noise. Skills climb fast, like a rough estimate of years of practice compressed into weeks. You start making smart moves with money and career based on what you remember. But the twist is cruel. Your first clever change alters who you meet, and the next opportunity never appears. You change your diet, your habits, your friends, your posture, your trajectory. You start picking safer choices by default because you remember what regret tasted like. But then a twist creeps in. You begin grieving timelines that never happened. You miss the version of a person who only existed in the life you erased. At a party, the jokes land differently and you feel displaced inside your own smile. Your memory insists there's a correct laugh that isn't here anymore. You also realize your body is younger than your experience, and that gap feels isolating. So answer this. If your best life requires deleting other lives, how much deletion can your conscience survive? A year in, the restart button stops feeling special and starts feeling available. You restart after a bad argument, a missed opportunity, a clumsy text, because it's only a day. That's the misconception trap in real time. Small restarts don't stay small. They stack like gambling pools, and soon you're chasing relief more than growth. Each restart trains your brain to expect rewinds, and your tolerance for uncertainty erodes. You become allergic to risk, but because you've tasted the illusion of perfect control. The escalation is subtle. You stop trying hard things unless you can guarantee the outcome. It gets worse when your confidence depends on the option to undo. Even joy becomes transactional because you compare it to a remembered better version. And when you can replay every mistake, forgiveness starts to feel like lying. So here's the question. If you can undo consequences, will you still learn from them? 10 years after the first restart, you are effectively older than your age. By a rough estimate, you might have lived 2 or 3 lifetimes inside one face. You've watched people evolve, then watched them again until their surprises feel rare. You can build wealth by choosing safer paths, and you can dodge heartbreak by leaving early. But the personal cost escalates. Every moment starts to feel like a draft. You hesitate because you can always rewrite, and rewriting becomes your reflex. But here's the twist. You start envying people who can't restart because their choices land once. Their laughter sounds real to you because it isn't edited. You also begin to fear boredom more than failure, and that's terrifying because boredom can make you careless with everything you once protected. So ask yourself, if you could restart forever, what stops you from restarting away your humanity? On the personal level, restart with memory creates identity strain fast. You are a child with an adult mind, and you must pretend to be smaller than you are. That mismatch leaks as impatience, sudden competence, and eyes that have seen too much. And when you restart after a fight, the other person never remembers the repair, so you carry both wound and bandage alone. Love distorts too. You can save a breakup by saying the right words, but those words don't belong to the moment, and intimacy becomes performance. On the society level, restart keepers become a hidden class, even if nobody calls them that. Picture a job interview where one candidate can redo every answer until the interviewer smiles. Picture negotiations where a restart keeper tests which promise lands, then returns and delivers it perfectly. It gets worse when everyone suspects this might be happening because trust collapses without proof. Markets bend too. A restart keeper avoids every bad purchase and times every opportunity by repeated experience, and fairness starts to feel fictional. On the planet level, the consequences ripple through systems never built for repeated lives. A reasonable assumption is that restart keepers cluster around high-impact roles: medicine, engineering, disaster response, because the power is too valuable to ignore. One person could relive an emergency room day until they choose a triage order that saves the most lives. But the hidden cost is moral fatigue and godlike guilt. Because you remember every patient you didn't choose in the other versions, another could relive a supply chain shock until they find the move that stabilizes shelves. Then competition reacts, and it gets worse when the fix becomes a dependency. Even science changes. A lab might rerun a month of experiments by restarting one key researcher, accelerating discoveries while hiding all the failed paths that taught caution. Counter-argument 1. This would make everyone happier. Maybe. But that assumes happiness equals control, and that's a risky assumption. Remove uncertainty, and you also remove surprise. Remove surprise, and meaning thins. A fixed life can still feel like a cage when nothing can astonish you. Counter-argument 2, you just restart until you get it perfect. That assumes perfection is definable, and it rarely is. People are not equations, and your emotions change with each repeat. The more you restart, the more you create new variables until perfect becomes a moving target. Counter-argument 3, you could prevent every mistake. Only if you can carry the weight of knowing every consequence, and that's an assumption that breaks under emotion. Avoid one disaster, and you may trigger another. Because life is a web, not a line, and you still have to live through every repeated day. Here's the light reversal. The more you restart, the less sure you are which life taught you love. Choose your restart carefully, because memory can be both a map and a trap. What if you could restart your life? But keeping your memories is what breaks you.